This is what day is it today? It is April 18th, 23. And you guys are all here for the think tank. We do this every week so that people can, stay up to date on what's going on with the project and ask any questions that they may have. We address any questions that have been asked previously publicly so that everyone is aware of the answers and everything that's going on. We will continue to do these meetings for the foreseeable future because I believe it's good for everyone to be aware of everything that's going on, since this is a community run and community developed project. I think it's really good that people are aware of everything. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have some really exciting stuff going on, and I have done something that I normally don't do, but this yesterday and the day before, and today, I have been kind of urging the developers to get Q apps going as soon as possible on the mainnet. So we have come to a consensus that we will be trying to get the functionality live on the mainnet by this weekend. So that means the very exciting edition of Q apps, the first initial iteration, which will have a plethora of new functionality that will be added to Qortal, should hopefully, if everything goes smoothly for the next few days of testing and bug fixes and so forth, will be launched this weekend. So now we have a tentative release date for the initial QApps functionality, and that is very soon. And I am extremely, extremely excited about this. I believe it will open up a whole new world for the project. It will allow everyone to utilize Qortal for essentially all quote unquote social media type things, right? So this is absolutely massive. This is something that doesn't really exist in other places. There are a few other decentralized, like video publishing platforms and so forth, but I believe that the methodology that Qortal utilizes will be made apparent as to why we believe it is superior, right? So I think this is going to be a turning point for the platform as far as getting attention. And I have already lined up multiple larger interviews. So we did the initial introduction with James Corbett. He is interested, once QApp's functionality goes live, to do a more in-depth interview. Someone's got some background noise. If you could mute yourself, please. Um, so we're going to do a more in-depth interview with James Corbett, and so that should be quite good for new users. We are also going to be doing more interviews with Sayer G. And Sayer recently mentioned Qortal on a talk with Mike Adams, the health ranger who runs the platform Brighteon. And he is now very interested in getting an interview with me. Sayer had actually connected me with him right before he mentioned the project to him. So we had just started talking, but now I have given him a lot more information about the project, and hopefully we will be scheduling an interview with him as well in the near future. And once we have that QApps functionality live, hopefully this weekend, then I can demo, the ability to publish videos on top of Qortal's infrastructure, utilizing either QTube or Qblog. We are simply waiting now on the styling for Qblog, which hopefully should be at least very basic by this weekend. The plan is to roll out basic functionality so that we have it all there. Then within the next week or so after that, multiple improvements for scalability and the styling for Qblog and so forth. So the initial version of Qblog may not be as quote unquote pretty as some other platforms for the very first release. But the cool part about Q apps is that they can be updated at any point. They do not require like a core update or a UI update unless there's some new functionality being added to the core and they want to include that in the Q app. Then, of course, they have to wait for that. But Q apps update the same way that websites do. So you can simply publish a new version of the app at any point. So we will be able to launch the initial version without as much pretty styling and so forth, just with the functionality there, so people will be able to start making use of it, and then within the next week or so make it pretty and add more visual type stuff and other additional features, and that those can be done whenever they are finished being developed. I was just like, you know what, please, let's just get the functionality out there. I think it's going to be huge. I think that people will, be really excited to play around with this. And so I did what I normally don't do and tried to urge the developers to get it done within a specific time frame. I was, I'm super excited about this, so I don't want to wait anymore. I think we have nailed down the majority of the bugs that could potentially come up. Now, obviously, when you launch anything like this, there will be things that come up on the mainnet that did not come up on the test net. So, bear with us as we do the first version and then we see how it goes from there. So I see someone raising their hand. It looks like they're not fully connected to the chat. But yeah, we can use that hand raising feature for anyone who wants to interject and ask questions. That's cool with me. So we can do that. But yeah, so we are going to hopefully have this functionality live this weekend, which is absolutely huge. This will also allow us to do all kinds of other things, like potentially starting to host the majority of our release files and so forth on top of QDN, so that then we could make that available through a gateway to the internet, or people who are already on Qortal can grab it directly from QDN, so we don't have to be as reliant upon the internet itself and things hosted on GitHub and so forth. We, of course, need to ensure that our gateway setups are, fully redundant and fully able to handle the traffic and so forth, but I don't think that should be much of an issue. Qortal.link gateway is already redundant with 2 nodes behind it. I can add another one behind it really easily, and I can teach others in the community how to set up gateway nodes, which I have a guide written for, so that we can have more potential, access points just in case for whatever reason my, Qortal.link gateway is not working or whatever, right? So I think we'll set up a couple more of those from the core team, and then I'll, urge the community to set up a couple public gateways if they're willing to do so, if they have the resources available to make that happen, and have a domain that they can use for that. I could also potentially give them a subdomain on one of my domains so that they could set it up on that. But so if anyone's interested in running a public gateway for QDN, the only real requirements are that you have, a decent connection and unlimited data, right? So I would say the best is to use a like a server in a data center that's always going to be online. But yeah, if anyone has the ability to set something like that up for accessing QDN data from the internet, that's going to be something that I think would be very helpful to the community if someone can help provide stuff like that for us. So for the future, when we have literally everything hosted on QDN, the only way for access from the internet to take place is through a gateway, right? So, and then someone still got some background noise. I don't know who that is, but if you could mute yourself, um, I think it might be guest here. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. Right. So yeah. Okay. So, Lieutenant, there, it looks like you're not able to get fully connected for some reason. I've seen this happen with a couple people. Are you using a gateway? Let me ask you in text since you said you can't hear, and I'm talking to someone who can't hear like an idiot. So, hold on just a second. Okay. So I also have the crypto mindset reset event going on today. That is going to happen in what 3 hours or so. So if you guys are interested in that, there will be an announcement about that. I should have probably done that already, but I will post links for that so you guys can jump in there and see what they've got going on. I will be talking both today and tomorrow for their event. They were kind enough to invite me to talk both days. So that's cool. I will also be, I think, doing a workshop to teach people how to set up Qortal. So if anyone is interested in jumping in there and making your comments known or assisting others with me, that would be cool. I have quite a bit planned for after Q App's release. James Corbett, Ernest Hancock, Mike Adams is not planned yet, but tentatively planned. And Sayer and I are going to do a couple more things together. So we've got those four. And I know for a fact that Ernest is really keen on getting all of his people to utilize Qortal for as much as possible. So I know that he's really keen to do that. So we should have quite a few larger communities getting more aware of Qortal and becoming, users and starting to actually make use of things now. I think, once we have these demos, it's going to be, the next level, guys. Like, this is really exciting stuff going on. We have been talking about Q apps for years. And so getting to the point that it's finally going to be live on the mainnet is extremely exciting, and I think that it's just going to be a lot of fun. I have already been doing a lot of testing on the test net with Qblog and so forth, and I've posted a couple of videos for people that I have published there just so they can get a general idea of what that's going to look like through a gateway and so forth. Cal also recently just added, so initially when you accessed through the gateway, there would be what looked like an error message that popped up on the screen saying, gateway authentication is not built yet, but it will be in the future type thing. He has changed that to a modal. So now it looks more like a notice as opposed to an error, and it pops up all pretty down to the bottom corner. So people won't think that there's a problem when they're accessing through a gateway when we don't have gateway auth done yet. I do not have an estimated completion date on the gateway auth quite yet, but that should come shortly after the QApps release. Yeah, QChat database and protocol, no ETA on that yet. I know that Cal has been working on that in the background, but it was not like one of his primary focuses right now. We had a couple other things that took priority. some of them related to Q apps and some not. So we needed to get those things out of the way first. But yeah, I will let everyone know as soon as the database and protocol stuff is becoming like an active development focus. There is a lot on Cal's plate, so I don't like to usually ask those types of things. I only did this time with Q apps because I'm literally just too excited to have it sit around anymore. I just want it to be out live. I want people to be able to see this because I really think that, this is like the primary functionality of the platform. So it's going to be absolutely huge. The initial versions of things, the Q apps functionality has a lot more functionality than I expected for the initial release. Now, Q blog and Q tube will be more basic initially. So I don't think comments will be a thing quite yet for the initial versions. So you won't be able to comment on blog posts and things like that with the initial version. But since you can update Q apps at any time, those features can come randomly, right? And as far as how all of that is going to be handled, we will have to like take that on a case by case, because as things get larger, right, there will be many Q apps that are not even like developed by us, right? So there will be other developers that will be able to announce these things. I think the a good idea would be to have a Q blog section for those types of things, but we can work that out a little bit later. Ultimately, we'll be able to start doing all announcements and hosting as much of our binaries and things like that, potentially even the bootstraps. We're talking about that now in the development server, hosting everything we can on QDN. So this is absolutely huge, guys. So everyone's aware that right now we have the 500 megabyte single publish limit, right? But when we can take and do a 500 megabyte single publish and follow it by another one, then that all of a sudden doesn't really become that large of an issue, right? So you can do things like zip something into 3 sections and publish those 3 sections separately, and then just link to it and have people download those 3 sections, and then they unzip as a single unzip, and the file comes back to a single file, right? So even the single publish 500 megabyte limit, I don't think is going to be much of an issue for anyone, even if they wanted to do larger things. They could even do things like, publish a video that is 2 gigabytes or whatever, just publish it in 4 parts, right? Like that used to be a thing back in the day when you could only fit so much space on or so much data on things like a DVD or whatever, right? So they would have movies that had 2 parts, right? They would have a DVD for part one and a DVD for part two, or VHS tapes, same idea, right? So we can do something similar to that and have, videos published in multiple parts to start with, which I don't think is that big of a deal. It's gonna open the doors for everything, guys. I'm super stoked about it. But yeah, the QChat database protocol, I am also really stoked about that, because that's going to make QChat actually be able to be used as a desktop messaging replacement, right? So we will no longer need to have 100% of our conversations on centralized things if we want those conversations to last longer than 24 hours, right? So that's going to be huge too. But like I said, I'm not currently trying to push development any harder than I already have. And I normally don't do that at all. So it's something that I'm already not feeling super great about doing, but I'm super happy about the functionality. And I know that we can take care of any little remaining issues that may pop up after the fact, which we'll always have to do that anyway, because there's always going to be a difference between the test net and the main net when it comes to all kinds of different aspects of things that we build. So there's always going to be a need to do some sort of modification. So as long as we've gone over it as much as possible, made sure there are no like severe bugs, I think we're fine. We'll push it to the mainnet, and the community can assist us in doing the initial testing on the mainnet. So I am really stoked about that. Quick Mithril has a question. Would it be possible to cut some of the existing UI function, or to put, sorry, some of the existing UI functions like wallet into a Q app that could then be updated independently from the UI? You know what? I don't see why not, right? Like the Q apps functionality is listed there on the GitHub in that Q apps document that Cal put together, right? And so a lot of the functionality that we would need for things like that is definitely there and available. So I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. But yeah, you could pretty much. I'm pretty sure you could do a lot of that. Yeah, especially wallet type stuff. I think that's definitely possible. I don't know about like grabbing wallet balances and stuff like that. But yeah, you might know more than that, more about that than I have, because well, we've been working more on the core lately. So, but yeah, I don't know. We have to ask Cal. What exactly functionality are you thinking of? Just just wallet stuff, or and why would we want to do that? That's my question. Right. Yeah. We'll have to see, right? Like I'm sure a lot of developers will come along and start messing around with this and see what functionality is possible and start building, all kinds of apps. So yeah, the idea is to make the UI more modular anyway, right? So but that's going to take place with UI plugins. So
Uh,
we will
Jason, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
Yeah, you could get the wallet balance and send
okay.
coins. So
So
those two
yeah, a
functionalities
wallet
are.
would totally be possible then. But the UI is looking to be modular anyway, right? So that's the whole idea behind the existing setup that it has with plugins and so forth, right? So we're gonna have the default plugins that come along with the default installation. Then we'll have the ability to grab other plugins that are either built by us or built by others that you can install into your UI and make it so that your interface is as customized as you like. And then the same idea is going to also apply to the core in the longer term future so that we can have, you know, um, say you have a machine with a lot more power and you have an app that's actually like a server side type thing that requires more power, then we have that ability. Then you'll be able to install a module specifically for that. But then we'll also be able to keep the core slim for things like a Raspberry Pi so that they can continue to run the basic functionality that we have now and don't need to add the other modules, right? So yeah, we're gonna have everything as modular as possible in the future. Yeah. How do the plans for plugins differ from QApps? Plugins could access external things like integrations with other programs. Right. Yeah. So yeah, plugins can do more because they are outside of QDN. Right. So yeah, all kinds of stuff can be done with plugins. Like even if someone say wanted to integrate with something like some centralized service in a plugin, they could absolutely do that. Right. Like we are not going to prevent people from developing anything, but we're going to have only our default ones that are built by us and completely decentralized and whatever, right? But if anybody else wants to build whatever functionality they can think of that can't work inside of QDN because it needs access to whatever else, right? They could build that as a UI plugin, and then it could be and also the UI plugin is a way to customize the interface itself and not what's inside of it, right? So they can do all kinds of different things with building a UI plugin as opposed to just a Q app, right? Credit card purchases on Qortal shopping carts. So the problem with that, of course, is the centralized aspect. So things that require reaching out to the internet are not going to be possible hosted on top of QDN and accessed through the Qortal UI. Now, yes, if somebody built a UI plugin that allowed that kind of stuff to happen, that's definitely possible. And also, I was considering the potential for, say, a JavaScript based PayPal plugin or whatever, right? That gets built on the Q app, and then when accessed through a gateway, allows people to use that payment method because it needs access from the internet, right? I'm not 100% sure if that's something that is possible or something that we want to consider doing, right? But basically, anything you can think of is probably possible. So I think it sounds reasonable, but we'll have to see how it goes, right? I think that a lot of people are definitely interested in having that type of thing on, especially when we're still, getting people to understand the differences between fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies and decentralized and not decentralized and so forth. So I think, having the potential for something like that to take place, it's always going to have, the caveat that comes with it where, it needs access to the internet. So accessing through a gateway is one potential, or having a specific plugin built for that is another. But I would personally not install that plugin, right? So if we could do it through QDN, but through a gateway, I could see that potentially working, and I could see the use case for that for people who are, still trying to get their users to understand why using decentralized stuff is better, right? So I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes. When CBDC, yeah, exactly, right. Yes, we're gonna have to go with never on that one. But yeah, so I mean, guys, the problem with the centralized things is that they're centralized, right? And the problem with trying to make a centralized thing work in a decentralized thing is that it adds a centralized component, which makes the entire thing not decentralized. So any sort of stuff like that directly in any default thing for Qortal, definitely not, right? But anything that other developers would like to build that they can build and that would work either through a gateway or an additional plugin that they want to build and that people could choose to install if they wanted to, or upon needing it or whatever. And but that's going to also take us to the level where we need to have a way to have the community vet these types of things and have a ratings system so that we're not, just willy-nilly installing plugins built by anybody, right? So until we have stuff like that, it's going to be totally on the end user to make sure that if they're going to install any external plugin, that they verify who created it, verify that it's actually doing what they say, and so forth. So I ultimately, when we get to having the Git repo on top of QDN as well, which I know there's already a service type for that on QDN. I don't know how far away that is as far as actually being a usable function, but once we have that, then the code itself can be on the same name and everything, so we can have easy, vetting and so forth. But those kinds of things I think are still a little bit further out. We will have the ability immediately, though, to have payment processing on every supported coin that Qortal supports right now. So, for example, we already have the ability to do tipping built into the QTube on the test net to like tip the developer, right? So you can have a link that comes up and you can pay with any supported coin. But yeah, so Quick says, is one hard thing I find when looking at browser editions, for example. Often there's no real rating, just a ton of reviews to read through, or worse, no reviews at all. So yeah, some kind of system like that is important. Absolutely, yeah. So we will have something similar to, I mean, for lack of a better word, the App Store, right, for external plugins for the UI. So we'll have to have a way for people to go through and rate them, and we'll also, I think, have to have a way for those ratings to be verified in some way. So it's not something that's going to be super straightforward to put together, but it won't be that difficult once we get an overall concept on how we want to do it and the way that makes the most sense and that can't be gamed and screwed with and whatever, right? So there's a lot that goes into everything when you're building a system like this, because it's not a single centralized thing that's easily controlled and that's been, having years and years of development already, and there's already plugins you can just go, install this to make sure this and this doesn't happen, that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So we have to do a significant amount of thinking and research and making sure that these things are going to be built correctly so that we don't have, a plethora of issues related to external plugins and things like that. So, but right now, the things that are going on at the moment are my focus. So, Q apps, hopefully this weekend, which means any developer can come along, build a Q app on top of Qortal, launch it, and make use of Qortal's infrastructure to host and run that application. Right, so it is really really cool. The Q blog and QTube functionality, I think, will really start getting people to understand what we mean when we say Qortal is an infrastructure platform. Once they can see a few demos built on top of that, and then they realize, oh, these are just a few demos of what is potentially possible, and more of those types of things will start getting built, and then it'll be like, oh, now I understand what they're talking about when they say infrastructure, right? So I think it's going to be a huge turning point for both understanding and also um, adoption, right? Another thing that's coming along at the same time with that release, and yes, I did say this weekend. I am not 100% sure on that, but I am trying to make that happen this weekend, and we have agreed that it is possible. So that's what we're hoping for, right? So yeah, this weekend, guys. Like, so I like to usually overestimate on completion times, and then uh, deliver under that estimate, right? So that's what I try to do most of the time. So when I was saying, a month or two away or whatever, then it comes in a week, and people are like, "Wow, that's amazing!" Right? So I like to do that as opposed to doing the opposite. As I've learned over many years of doing this, that estimating completion dates are very difficult with things like this. So I always overestimate at first, and then hopefully under deliver or deliver under the deadline, right? It doesn't, under deliver doesn't sound right. So deliver under the deadline is a better thing to do, right? So yeah, we are trying to get Q apps live this weekend. So that will be absolutely amazing. I'm super stoked about it. Anybody who has potentially utilized Qortal in the past and realized that there's not a lot there yet, and da 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 da. They need to come back. They need to check it out. Right. Apps already here. Exactly. Yep. We've been testing this on the test net for a while now, guys. And the functionality, as far as I'm concerned, is already spot on. Yeah, we have a few little things to improve. Yeah, Qblog won't be as pretty as it would be if we waited another week or so, but you know what? Like, I want this functionality out there. I want people to really see the power of Qortal. I want, like, it's time. I think it's time for this to happen. It's time for all of the naysayers and people who said we'd never get this done and all of that kind of stuff to just be quiet and look and see, right? So I am extremely excited about it. Yeah, people can start building more things. Exactly. Yeah, so anybody can come along, build an app. You know what I mean? It's going to be great, and you're not going to need to worry as much about the single publish limits. You'll be able to multiple publishes, and you can use any sort of publish anywhere, and you link to that content, right? So now we can also do links. I don't know if the ability to put those links into QChat and click them and so forth is going to be immediately available, but that'll come really shortly after, if not immediately. I need to verify with the devs to see if they can get that done in the time frame. If not, no big deal. But that will be possible too. So you'll be able to link to, say, a blog post or a website, or link from your website to a blog post, or link from your website to a video or a picture hosted anywhere else on QDN. So it's going to be like opening the doors completely as far as building things on top of Qortal. It's really, really going to be awesome. I am super stoked about it. And what else I'm super stoked about is we are also at the same time making it so that the UI is the only thing that needs to be installed. And now I personally thought that this would take a little bit longer to do, but when we get our developers to put their mind to something, it happens really quickly. So, yeah. Alpha was like, oh, by the way, I'm working on this. And then, like, 3 days later, it was done. So, we now have the ability when we do this next release of the UI, it'll be you need to install only the UI. You install only the UI. Then, when you run the UI, it checks first to see if Qortal's running. Then, if it's not running, it checks to see if it's there installed. If it's not, it'll ask you to download and install. You say yes, it does it for you. If it's there and not running, it'll ask you if you want to run it, right? So you literally only have to install and run the Qortal UI. The rest of it will be taking place automatically as messages come up and ask you whether you'd like to do something or not, right? Yeah, exactly. Boom, right? Yeah. So this is going to make the onboarding process much, much, much simpler, right? So yeah, no, it'll do the Java installation for you too. The Windows version comes with a portable Java. I don't know exactly how the Mac version is going to function, but the Linux version will install Java for you, and this is all done without the need for sudo. I don't know how they figured this out, but they did. So now you'll be able to literally just install the UI, and installing the UI is extremely simple. And this, I think, will really, really help for Mac users because I've personally run into multiple Mac users who have had, issues with the terminal, right? Like most Mac users do not use the terminal. That's what I've realized. And I'm the exact opposite because I really don't like much about Mac other than the terminal is similar to Linux. So I only use the terminal, right? But most people do not use the terminal on Mac. So asking them to do so makes things a little confusing. Also, making the Qortal core start automatically on a Mac is like a 12-step process. And so even teaching them how to do that so that their core will start automatically is a process that's hard for them to follow. So it's like, okay, we're at a dead end with the Mac stuff. If you can't figure out how to start with the terminal, it's super easy to do that kind of stuff on Windows. It's super easy to do it on Ubuntu. It's super easy to do it on basically everything else. But Mac, no. Mac, it makes everything difficult. My guess is because it's something to do with their being based on Unix. But I don't know really. Like they just make things difficult, right? So you have to do it in multiple different ways, and either of those ways is about a 12-step process, and even explaining the process to people is difficult. So this will make a massive difference, especially for Mac users, where they'll literally just be able to start the UI and say, oh, would you like to start the core? Yes. Oh, sorry, you don't have the core. Would you like to install it? Yes. Okay, good. Bam, done, done and done, right? Then we'll also roll out the Archive v2, which is already in the code. We just have not enforced it yet. So when we do that, then the full node database goes down dramatically in size, and we no longer have those concerns either, right? So now you can install on a machine with really small hard drive and still run a full node. So that also means that we will be removing the ability for top only nodes to mint. Top only nodes will basically be not necessary at all anymore because the full node DB will be at a similar size for the Bootstrap download as the top only. So it's really like, why are you running a top only node? For no reason, because it won't be any difference in size to download. It won't be any difference in size on your drive, and it still uses the same amount of data no matter what because it's still synchronizing the chains. So there's absolutely no difference at all. In my opinion, we should just get rid of it completely, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, top only node's not going to be a thing really. There's no point for them anymore. I think we should probably just get rid of them entirely because I mean, it's something that was temporary. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't supposed to be something that kept going forever because we had always planned on making, minters need to run a full node, right? So that's the whole point, right? If you're not running a full node, then you're not supporting the network as much as you could be. And so minting with a top only node was only supposed to be a thing because at one point, the database before we had the archive method was getting quite large, and we had to have something in the interim to allow people with less hard drive space to continue to run a node. So yeah, I mean, I think we should get rid of it completely because we don't need it anymore and there's no point for it, right? We can figure that out once we get a little bit further along. But yeah, so the full node database is going to be decreasing in size significantly. The ease of use to install the software is going to be increasing significantly. We will have no more issues with people having to deal with the terminal, right? Like it's going to be pretty awesome. I know Quick is also working on the settings stuff, being able to, right now, I think just pull the settings, right? Just pull the settings with the UI, but soon we'll be able to set the settings with the UI as well via API. So Quick. All right, sweet. Yeah. So that's just right now you can pull the settings, right? And then we're working on so we can change them with the API. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, soon enough we will be able to change settings with the API, which means that we will be able to build that functionality into the UI, which means that people won't even have to manually edit their settings.json anymore, right? You'll just have those settings built into the API, and you can just change them on the fly. I think that also means that we don't need to restart the core for them to apply. Is that also true? Depending on the setting, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it would make sense for some things to need a restart and some things not, but I think you've already figured out how to make the core restart itself too, right? So that shouldn't be a problem either. So we are like rocking and rolling on making everything really, really straightforward. One single install, that's all you need. Now, if you are an advanced user and you want to install things separately, like I tend to like to do stuff like that. Or if you want to, run a headless machine and still run just the Qortal core, of course, that's going to continue to be possible. So you don't have to worry about that. The UI is not going to be a requirement. It's just going to be, a lot simpler to set up. And I think I'm going to change the downloads page on Qortal.org to make it so that the UI is the primary focus, and then we'll put the downloads for the core like down a little bit lower so that if people do want to do it separately they can, but it's not like going to be something that's confusing with a bunch of different downloads for each OS. So we'll be able to be like, Windows, here, one download, run this, it'll tell you what to do from there. Like, so it's going to be so much simpler, guys. And then of course we'll start working on the light node functionality. Now, the light node functionality is going to allow a lot of other cool things to happen. So we'll be able to, hopefully, we'll figure this out pretty quickly, being able to bundle a light node with the UI so that when you download the UI, or maybe it'll just download the light node for you, whatever, I don't know. But you'll just be able to have a fully working Qortal immediately, right? Then if you want to become a minter, that's when you need the full node, or if you want to just support the network by running a full node or whatever, right? So you'll be able to just click that and set up a full node and you're good to go. Yeah, I mentioned the Git repo. I know there's a service type already for it. I don't know like exactly when that's going to be something that's made available at this point. So I will update people as time goes on with that. I need to get a drink of water, guys. My mouth is like killing me right now. So I'll be right back. If anybody wants to talk while I'm gone, let me know. And yeah, there's like an ever expanding list of things to do, and it makes me want to like start jumping more into learning JavaScript and so forth, so I can jump in and help more with this kind of stuff. So yeah, anybody who is willing to help with this and understands how to write JavaScript or Java and wants to help us, we are always looking for more assistance there. We have an ever expanding list of things. I personally want to get a Q app that functions as project management tool so that we can, have all of that on top of Qortal as well. But yeah, I'm gonna get a drink of water. Someone else can pick up talking for a minute, and I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Wow, a lot of other people have things to say, huh? Okay. Anyways. Okay, what did I miss here? Nothing, nothing. Rose code remover, worship plugins. Uh, Move reward share under the minting tab. I mean, yeah. I don't see why not. I guess it's basically only focused on minting. So yeah, I don't see why not. Makes enough sense to me. Um, does anyone have any questions or other questions I didn't address already, or um, anything else that they want me to talk about?
When Moon.
All right, that's a question I don't know how to answer. So,
Oh boy.
um, wait, removing it? Yeah, no, I don't. No, don't remove it because I think it's still good to keep. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad people are liking what I have to say. Uh, but yeah, we definitely want to keep the reward share tab because it's usable for other things, and we can actually make it do other things too in the future. So, and I still use it to create minting keys because it's quicker than waiting for the sponsorship plugin to go through its whole thing. Which I mean, it does mean that my keys are not confirmed immediately. I just have to tell people, wait a few blocks and then apply it. But I am I like things to be quicker. So yeah, but yeah, so I still use it. So I don't want to remove it, and it's still usable for actually creating reward shares. And I don't see why we would get rid of
Yeah,
it.
I still use it.
hmm I think people
Stuck
who
in the old ways.
yeah, people who've been around for a while will probably continue to use it. So it's fine to keep, and yeah, we don't necessarily need it, but we do if you're actually doing reward shares, right? So but yeah, did G you had something that you wanted me to talk about, right?
Oh sure, some fun stuff. Let's
Yeah.
see here. Okay, so the good old crypto vigilante private Telegram chat, Mr. A. He never fails to
Right.
stir the dust. All right, so I'll just read you the message, and if we could get a response from you on this. So originally, someone else wrote this message. Okay, it's simple to just ask regarding sponsorship. It's like doing a CAPTCHA test to avoid bot scamming. All it takes is about 1 week of running your node through a minting key. Then you'll be minting on your own. By the way, minting sucks and doesn't really pay you anything, but supports the network. If you want some real court, if you want some real court, you simply buy it in the P2P trade decks. Best way is to use R like you did. Also, Q app's about to launch soon. I'd give you a key, but I'm only level 4. Got about 6 more months to go before I can share keys. So, Mr. A, he quoted that message and then responded with 2 paragraphs here. So I'll let you know when I finish reading this here. Do
hmm
you all realize how ridiculous this sounds? Replace this with another network. We'll use imaginary proof of work coin Dork as example. You want you want to mine Dork, but need permission from current miners who hold the majority of the early mined Dork. Currently, mining difficulty is so high, mining is not really profitable anyways. So you can buy coins from the early miners, speed mining or pre-mine scam? Question mark. At a premium and get your stash. Then you want to play with DApps on Dork. Nope, no can do.
Wait,
Gotta
what?
get gotta get centralized Dork cartel permission again from X
um
level cartel member who will give you another key. So I guess right there he's
okay.
associating that. Hold
Yeah,
on, I'm not done
he's
yet. Hold on.
okay. Well, we're gonna need to address this in pieces, I think, because I'm
Okay.
not gonna remember everything by the
All
time
right.
you get to
Go
the
ahead.
end.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, okay. For one, like calling the people who have started minting earlier than others a quote unquote cartel is
Yeah.
a bit extreme, right?
Yeah, a
Like
bit
it's
dramatic.
right, yeah. It's literally like he's angry for some reason, and I don't really understand why. And also, he needs to also realize that minting is meant to be reversed of mining, right? So instead of having to buy more hardware in order to get more. You simply just run your one node and you level up, you get more over time. Also, focusing on the quote unquote profit, right? What
Right.
does he mean by that, right? Does he mean that he's not able to sell the court to USD and make a quote unquote profit over his power costs? If so, he's also incorrect there. It also depends on the node that you're running, but focusing on profit is not the focus, right? The idea is to earn coin for supporting the network and to earn more as time goes on. Now, the permission thing is, in my opinion, just a stupid thing, right? It's stupid to say that it's a permission
It's one way to
system.
twist it.
I mean, it's yes, you do have to communicate with the community and give them a small bit of information, like mostly where did you hear about the project, and that's about it, right? Like, I have not run into
Yeah.
a single person who has wanted to become a minter and wasn't an obvious person trying to get multiple keys, right? And was
Right.
not able to become a minter, right? Most
Gosh,
of the
we go over
time,
this over and over and over. It gets
yeah,
so well. Okay, so look at this
it's
on our
silly.
shirts,
Yeah.
on the shirts that I'm making right now. Right, one of
Mm-hmm.
our favorite slogans is P2P solutions. Right. So when
Right.
it comes to like even the minting aspect, I look at it and regard it as another peer-to-peer solution. Right. It
Right.
requires a human interaction. This is a necessity in order to combat, mining farms, because if we're restoring satoshis, the concept of an average computer being able to take part, well, then what's stopping anybody from just rigging the system?
Right. And
Well,
if we
it's a
if we
peer to
were
peer.
to allow if we were to allow sorry, not to cut you off, but if
No,
we
go
were
ahead.
to allow anyone to just start minting, right? Then it would get right back to the exact same thing where, hardware is what matters. So the people who
Right,
run more nodes would be able to have more minting accounts and would be able to make more and would be able to have more influence. It wouldn't work, right? That's
right,
not the idea. The idea is to have one account for a person dedicated to that person that levels up over time and gets more influence in the network, right? So if we do it without that, then you get influence in the network from having more machines, which just leads right back to being centralized into the hands of the people who can afford more computers. So
right.
it's not done on an accident the way that we did this. It was on purpose. It was built this way to be this way on purpose. It was not like some thing, oh, but we have to have this because no, we
Right.
built it this way with intent. It was made to be yeah, person to person, exactly. Like, yes,
So
you have to talk to someone, get a key to get started, and the initial period is just to prove yourself that you can
to the
keep your
network.
node running,
Right.
right? And that's it, right? Then you become
Sure.
level 1 and you don't need any so-called permission from that point on. Now, the thing he's talking about with DApps or whatever, right? He's DApps, okay, fine, whatever. We'll call him DApps. QApps, right? You don't need to be a minter. You don't even need to have a node running to be using QApps. You can do it through a gateway. So I don't even understand what he's on
Well,
about with
yeah,
that at all. Like,
then you want to play with dApps on Dork. Nope, no can do. You gotta get centralized Dork cartel permission again from X level
so
cartel
that's just not
member.
true. Yeah.
Right, it's right. It has okay. So just to clarify, Mister A, right? So number one, minting is totally optional. You don't
Right.
have to be a minter in order to use the rest of the network when it comes to
Right.
QChat, QApps, QDN, so on and so forth. Minting only allows for earning coin in exchange for supporting the network. You increase your account level and move into different reward tiers. You also earn a blocks minted credit, which will then equate to a voting weight if you want to participate in the future voting system. And once you reach level 5, this is another thing to backtrack real quick. He said, you want to mine Dork, but need permission from current miners who hold the majority of the early mined Dork. Incorrect, sir. Check it out.
Right.
Wherever you identify as, check it out. Right? It's as simple as this. Okay, so the project started off with founders and core forgers who were able to help start from Genesis as sponsors, right, and help build this network. But then from that point moving forward, any account that reaches level 5 or higher becomes sponsor enabled.
Right.
So yeah, that process is approximately like what we say about 14 months if we had a 60-second block time. So it takes a little bit longer than that. approximate, figure. But point being, basically, in about a year and a half's time or so, anybody is able to have joined the project and become sponsor enabled as a level 5 and help build the network, for better or worse. All
Right.
right. So we got a lot of inaccuracies in these statements here.
Yeah, and the whole thing with it, like needing permission to use Q apps, that is totally untrue. Like it's
Right.
just like, where
The
did he
only
come up with
time,
that? It's
right? So
obvious
the
he's never
only,
used the platform. Like
yeah.
it's just
So
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just reiterate the one more pointer so we're crystal clear. The only thing that needs this so-called permission or gatekeeping or sponsorship is the totally optional minting aspect. But when it comes to your wallets, your Q chat, your QDN, your Q apps, all of that is wide open. That doesn't require any
Yeah.
sort of peer-to-peer human
You can
interaction.
even publish an app without anything. You don't even need,
Yeah.
okay, so you need to register a name. So you need to get a tiny amount of court in order to do that. But once you've done that, you can publish everything for free. Like
Yeah, we
it's
just have people
ridiculous.
being we
Like
have people just being a little lazy and making accusations without any due
right.
diligence, and
Like
it's
you
becoming
can
pretty
come in
pathetic,
with
Mr. A. We
any
see you.
coin.
Yeah,
Like
this is becoming the same song and dance with whoever you are, bro,
I
behind the
know.
comfort of your keyboard, and you really need to, step your game up, please.
Like
So
if
the,
you're
the
gonna
last
like, so
paragraph
what I
here,
do, so and this is what I do, right? Like if someone says, oh, this other project can do everything Qortal can do, for example, Dero, since Captain Roy
yeah,
here is mentioning Dero, right? Like, so they said, oh, Dero can do everything Qortal can do and it's totally anonymous. Okay, fine, let's see if that's true, right? I install it, right? I see nothing but a wallet and a very confusing wallet that you have to use the arrow keys on the keyboard in order to go from one place to the next. Okay, we can ignore that, right? But if it can do everything that Qortal can do, then where is all the other functionality? If you're going to say something can
yeah,
do everything Qortal can do and all of the functionality is
yeah,
theoretical or it's all in the API and is not there available for everyone to see and use, then you're
yeah.
wrong,
And this
right?
isn't
Like
you trying to deliberately,
no, I'm not saying anything negative about
diss another
Dero.
project. Well, no, my
Right.
point though is we are not out to diss other projects. We're actually eager to find other projects that are of the right caliber
Absolutely.
that we can either one of two things, either salute you or find a way to shake hands and build some sort of collaboration, just like we've done with Pirate Chain.
Right.
So you got to really understand the dynamics of how we assess projects and how we're trying to address these so-called comparisons, right? It's not about, oh, how can we make Qortal look bigger and better, and how can we diss a project? It's about, no, let's put ego aside and look at what is what. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
last paragraph here from Mr. A. So anyone remember what a decentralized, peer-to-peer, permissionless, open smart contract blockchain looks like? This is most definitely not it. We'll take an open network anytime, and thankfully we have Dero, and it is private. So they're
Yeah.
doing a little
Okay.
privacy diss at the end.
So, like, I would really like to know how to go about actually publishing an application hosted on top of Dero. And
Yeah.
it's not possible, as far as I can tell. And you can also only use these so-called D apps in the same fashion as regular web apps, right? So yeah, oh, anyone can spin up a web server and start one. Yeah, okay, fine, but that's not the same thing at all as Qortal. Literally every aspect of the application on Qortal is on a distributed, decentralized network. That means
Right.
that we're not tied to the internet at all, right? Like,
Right.
so that is the main difference that I've seen with almost every other so-called D-app application fucking hosting platform, right? They do not actually decentralize everything. And that, in my opinion, is huge, right? Like, if you are relying upon the internet for your user interface for everything that you build, right? Then
Yeah.
whatever happens to that one single domain or whatever, whoever runs that domain forgets to do their SSL certificate update or whatever, all the nonsense that comes along with the internet. Oh, their hosting provider has some downtime. All of the people who
It
use
has a
that
choke point.
interface, right,
Right.
cannot
That's the best
access it
term.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a choke
And
point.
it's ridiculous. So, yeah, we have gateways too, and people can access from the gateway too, but that is not the only way they can access. They can also access right from within the Qortal UI, which does not rely upon the internet, and you go, bam, done, right? Like, so it's Yeah, that's the primary difference. Also, like, how do you even go about doing this? How do you even go about publishing an application there? And then how do you go about letting people know that there's an application that's been published? So
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
like,
can
yeah,
I
I don't know.
can I
Yeah,
jump in
go
for a
ahead.
sec?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you're talking about my post that I that Mr. A was referring or responding to, and I actually
Nice.
got kicked. I got
A
kicked
home
out of the
pro. You're home pro.
yeah. I got kicked out of the group
Okay.
yesterday
Oh,
because of
Oh,
this.
how
wow.
Basically,
convenient,
Wow.
right? Right.
yeah.
So anybody
Um,
who questions or
So
like
yeah,
wants to
he's the
talk
one who
about
had that
anything else.
original message that Mr. A responded to.
Wow. So
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
that you bring up something, some valid points, and he flips out, gets angry about it, says all this nonsense, and
Yeah.
bans you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's chicken
Wow.
shit.
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
guys, can I just say something for a
Yeah. Yeah.
second? Yeah, on the first version of QApps, people will be able to create a YouTube alternative on the first version.
Yeah.
So where
It's
else
pretty profound,
where else
right?
could you do, and with ease too, with ease.
Right.
All you have to know is JavaScript. The API is super simple. You don't need to know any backend language. You don't have to spin up your own server farm or anything. Uh, where else could you do that? Nowhere.
Nowhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
it's
That's
great.
the
It's
thing.
great that it's like JavaScript based because that really opens it up to a lot of things.
Yeah.
But but there are some things I've been studying up on Duro and learning how to write some contracts over there. And there are apps you can do with it. It's more than just like right now everybody's focused on making stupid NFT cartoons, but there's actually like one app
Y-
that's pretty cool is there's a decentralized poker game you can play with
right.
Dero.
Well, that's
And
cool. I would be
so it's like
interested in
it's
that.
private, it's
But
slow
I mean,
because you
where
have
is
to
the
wait.
how do you access it?
Six of Clubs has it on GitHub. He's the one that put that out.
So
But
you
you can actually anybody can host their own
right. So you
card
have to
room.
spin up a server and host it, right?
Well, you have to have Dero running. Yeah, it works. It
Yes.
talks. It talks to the Dero blockchain.
So that's
So
the main thing, right? Is they're relying still upon web servers.
no, it's not. It's actually kind of slow because of that. It has to wait 18 seconds for every block to happen to
Yeah,
actually make the next move. So it's
but
not
to
like
run the application, I mean.
it's written in Go language, and
Right. But
and so it's you just download the GitHub repo, and you can just it's Mac, Windows, Linux. It's a desktop app, and but it talks to the Dero blockchain.
oh, okay. So it's just it's a client side app. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
then
But
and then I
my
was
question.
doing another one where the Dero. I think they're on their second year now of doing these hackathon contests for people to just come up with whatever make
Right.
some cool shit, and there's different categories. And I was involved with a group that we were working on doing a Airbnb. It's like an Airbnb replacement, on Dero. So it's like private property rentals, and you can list your property, and I mean, people get banned off of Airbnb for something they
Right.
said
Like
on Twitter
so
or something.
but
So
my
this is
question
like
is like so when you publish an app, how do other people find it?
yeah, just I guess you have to know,
You have to
what's out
yeah, you just
there,
have to
or
know,
it
right. So
has to
that's
get marketed. Yeah, there
so
there is one project in the works where somebody's kind of tracking everything that's available on Dero, and they
okay.
have a website.
I mean, I that's
I think
why I
it's called
like
Arcane Sphere or something like that. But
I
yeah,
mean,
they're
that's
sort
why I
of
like Q apps and the way that we do it is that like you can see all the applications published in the Q apps thing. So you
yeah,
can just go and browse them, right? So someone can publish an app and it just becomes available to everyone. It's not like they have to, somehow present it to everyone and then everyone has to download another individual thing in order to run it. And like, you have all the other potential issues that come up with that. If it's all built inside of the same platform, then you just literally click to download it inside of the same platform. It runs, you're good.
yeah,
And you
exactly. I
see
love
all
that
of
about
them that
Qortal. It's
yeah.
kind of an
So
all inclusive. It's all in one
yeah.
package. Yeah, and it does
Right.
everything. But
And
Right.
you know what?
but
You know what I
there
would
are
say though? Hey, there's
yeah.
differences in opinions of how to do design, and
Totally.
that's cool. Hey, at least we see the innovation happening at this
Yeah.
time in our lives. So
Yeah,
I'm not a
exactly.
hater. I'm
No,
all
I would
for
be
it.
fine with
You know what
building
I mean?
support for Diro. I think the only problem with Diro that I found really is that there was a pre-mine. Is that correct? I think it was
Yeah,
Duro that
yeah,
had
I
a
think
pre-mine.
I think so. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it went to like a dev fund or
right,
something. But
exactly. So, I mean, that's like the only like that's my main issue with it, right? Like with the platform and the fact that people say it does everything Qortal does, which is not true. I mean, that's just not true. I
no,
don't like it
no,
when people say that kind of
they're
thing when it's
wrong.
not true.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
yeah, and
A is way wrong about Portal,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean there are some actual interesting projects going on in Duro
Oh yeah, I'm
besides
sure. Yeah.
just like there's even someone just had like they're doing like Duro classifieds and they're doing
Yeah, we
Duro
will have all kinds of stuff like that coming
you
on
can
Qortal
swap
too.
XMR for Dero, like but I know you guys already have all that with the cross train or cross chain
Yeah, and
swaps.
that's
Hey, you
another
know
thing too.
what? That's
Is that
cool. That's awesome. That's out there.
it is
Uh,
cool, but I also like how like doing those cross chain trades and stuff with without the technology to do it correctly
right.
is my question too. Because like in order to do a cross chain trade with something like XMR, you have to be able to do the locking, which does not exist on XMR. So I'm wondering how they're doing that. And in my opinion, it has to be some sort of at least semi trusted setup, right? Like, so there's some sort of other thing going on there that is not 100% like trustless, truly cross chain. Like there's some
Possibly,
other,
yeah.
yeah,
I
So
haven't
there is a
studied the
choke
code.
point somewhere, is what you're
I
saying.
haven't
there
studied the
is,
code on
yeah,
that,
Yeah.
right. So like,
and then what I saw also with Dero, I mean, what I didn't like, and I still don't get how these NFTs. It's just the files. It's an image hosted somewhere, right? So,
right,
like the standard practice is to put it on IPFS, and then point to that,
right.
through the smart contract. But I'm thinking with Qortal,
It's all in one place,
yeah,
all tied to the
you
name,
don't
and
need
then
to
you,
have a
right.
third party service to
Right.
host your
Exactly. And
files. Yeah.
that's the thing is that we have it all in one place. We have it all so where people can find everything easily. We have it all to where when we launch the NFT stuff, which I'm not sure if that's coming immediately with Q apps, but it's definitely something that we've talked about where you'll have the ability to have basically an unchangeable section that you can use as the proof of ownership, and then you can have the data tied to the name too. Right. So then you'll be able to sell that name and it comes along with the data and the ownership and everything, right?
Right.
So it's all easy, straightforward, right? So yeah, and that's the thing I've always wondered about this NFT craze and everything before. They were using
Mhm.
centralized servers to host the actual data and things like what was that? FTX had a bunch of NFTs stored on their servers, right?
Hmm.
And so when that went down, so did all those NFTs and their data, right? So it's just like, okay, that makes no sense at all. So I have proof of ownership, but I don't have the actual thing that I own. It's like, okay,
Yeah. Nah,
whatever.
it's dumb. I'm too old for that. Yeah, I got gray hairs and stuff. I don't really keep up with, children's cartoons and shit. But
Yeah. So this, so
yeah,
this, so this very high focus on having no choke points has its place. There's a reason
Right.
why Cordal is so passionate about,
Yeah.
removing any of these, again, choke points. I love
I
that
mean,
term. Uh,
that's the exact reason that we did everything the way that we did. And I think that after people really see it in action, like they're really going to start to understand why we did things the way we did because we're not going to run into any of these other issues with doing things the way that the other platforms do them, right? Like we're not going to have to rely on anyone installing some other application in order to run a Q app or whatever, right? Like it's all going to be there, easy to find. It's all going to be on Qortal only, so you don't have to rely on any sort of external dependencies at all. It's going to make everything a lot simpler, right? Like, so we're targeting the ability for this to all be utilized by anyone, right? And with the ability to install the core with the UI comes along the ability for basically everyone to start using Qortal, right? Because they'll be able to just run it, especially when we have light nodes, because then they'll just be able to run it and everything will work immediately. Then, if they want to become a minter or if they want to run a node to support the network or if they, any of that, they can just click a button and do that, right? Immediately. So it's like, it's going to
you mean
be the
minting is
ease of
optional?
use. Right? Yeah. Yes, it has always been optional. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think the focus on being our own completely self-contained thing that is separate from the internet and separate from all the other things is really good.
having
And
no reliance on third
Absolutely,
parties.
yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
And so the way that we did things, yes, it might have taken a little bit longer. Yes, it might have, all this stuff that took place to get us here, right? But it's all done with intent,
Three
and
years of
yeah.
there's
madness.
reasons behind it all.
That's
Yeah.
what's so exciting about it, because I mean, because basically, it's been a conversation. I mean, some people, yeah, there's some things working, like the chat, and now the website thing was huge, but and then getting all the wallets in there was a big part. But yeah, it's basically been like kind of talk about this future thing, and now it's all kind of coming to fruition where
Right.
A little bit
everything
of clunky
once
proof of concepts here and there, and
yeah, once people see like
there's a method to the
what
madness.
it really is and what it can actually do, I think it'll be a no, like people will obviously get it. It's how
Right.
can you not get it?
Right,
I
I
don't
know.
understand.
That's the thing is like we've been only able to talk about the future, right? And like, oh, this and this will be possible. And but this is another cool thing too, right? So because people have heard us talking about this for so long, then they're going to see that we follow through with the things that we talk about, right? And
Right.
so now when we say in the future this is going to happen, they're going to be like, okay, for sure, in the future this is definitely going to happen, right? So, and that's
Right.
another thing, like, and we've been doing that since the beginning. If you've been following since Genesis, you've seen countless changes and all these things. Oh, this will happen, and then it happens. This will happen, then it happens, right? So
Yeah.
it's like we follow
No matter
through.
how painful the
Yeah.
process.
Right. And it's always not simple, right? Like doing any of the
Right.
things that we're doing has never been simple. I never expected it to be, oh, yeah, this will just be like, oh, we'll build this application. It'll be super easy and we're good. Like, no, it's never been that. It's just been a
The right
long
way
term
is not
thing.
always easy way,
Yeah,
right?
it's exactly it. Yeah. If we
Yeah, I
were
love
going to do
that. I love
everything,
Pain
I
of a
love the
superior way.
foresight. I love the
yeah,
foresight and the insight, and yeah, the fact that you set everything up in a particular way so that it would be basically unstoppable, and
right.
and
And, and
it'll be
even
really
like,
And
interesting
that's a
once.
very bold term, right? To say unstoppable. Can it
right.
truly be unstoppable? Well, that's a very bold topic. And the answer
Hmm.
here is a resounding yes. Other
Yeah.
than the choke point of internet service itself, which yes, we have an idea for that, within our
Yeah, with the
mesh
mesh
network concepts,
networks.
but
Yeah.
right? Like literally if that's our only choke point, like we have a pretty profound opportunity at hand. You
Yeah.
know, Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
when it comes to like content creators wanting to adopt this, right? There's a couple different things that come to mind. Of course, monetizing their work, which is a
Right.
separate thing that I wanted to kind of touch on. But analytics, what would be the limitations, or what's the scope of how a content creator might want to
Okay.
have analytics and really
So
looking at ROI
it's
and whatnot?
it's not okay, so it's not straightforward like it would be on the internet, right? Because on with analytics on the internet you can easily just keep track of how many people have accessed it because it's all on a server and you're good to go, right? But with
Right.
Qortal there's none of that, right? There's no server, you're not accessing things from a central location, you're not like, so the only way to get like quote unquote analytics, and there'll be very basic type analytics, you'll only be able to really kind of basically count how many copies of the data exist on the network. And that will give you a general idea of how many users with Qortal nodes, now that's a key point there, how many users with Qortal nodes have at least accessed that thing. Right. So then we can have a Q app or some other thing that comes along that allows you to see how many copies of said Q app or whatever exist on the network, right? So then you can get a pretty general idea, at least, of how many, at least, Qortal users have accessed it, right? And these users have to be users who are, actually running a node. Now, this could also be a light node because light nodes will still be able to store data, right? So it's, but yeah, like you won't be able to ever accurately count unless you set up your own gateway. If you set up your own gateway and point everyone through that gateway and then count the number of accesses on Qortal by seeing how many copies of the data exist, then you can get a pretty decent idea of how many people have utilized that particular thing, right? So you can do what I've been calling, which isn't official or anything. I've just been calling it a quote unquote private gateway, and you can set up what I call a private gateway, which means that you could have a gateway set up like I do on Qortal.link, which mine is a public gateway, which allows access to any name. So you say slash whatever registered name, and it'll take you there, right? But what you can do is you can set up a private gateway where you have the gateway on a domain and it's the same idea, but that gateway only accesses one registered name. So if you do that and you put your gateway there and you direct people to that domain to use it as opposed to using it through the public gateway, then you say, I can count how many users I've gotten through that gateway there because I run that domain and I can put up analytics on that or whatever. And then I can also count how many copies of the data exist on QDN to see a rough idea of how many Qortal users have accessed it. But there's no such thing as analytics on Qortal. Like, it's just not really possible unless the user like decides to allow some thing to happen where they can like put data to a certain location and display that information, right? So if the app was built in such a way to where it was meant to track users and so forth, and the user opted in to allowing that data to be published somewhere, that could be a thing, right? So it's really all opt in, right? It's not like the internet where you can just track people because it's all on a centralized thing and it's really easy to do. That we're dealing with a completely decentralized distributed network, so it's totally different than dealing with anything on the traditional internet. Now, applications can obviously be built to like do as much as possible, or have a user opt in to sending this data or whatever, right? That's totally possible to do. But I mean, as far as just tracking stuff, it's not like a default thing. It's not possible really to do because of the way the network's built. And now that's also a positive, right? Because the whole tracking users and all that, and it gets into paid advertisements that track your individual needs and try to tailor ads to you and all of that shit, right? Like that is no longer possible, which in my opinion is a good thing. But if you are actually trying to figure out how many accesses that you've had or whatever, the easiest way to do that is just to have a gateway, but that's only going to be on the internet, right? So it's going to have to be a thing that's thought out and built specifically for that, or just something that counts the numbers of data that exist on QDN. Like, it's really, that's all you can do. There's no data going back and forth, so it's like it's how do you do it? I don't know, right? Like it's built to not be able to do that, right? It's built to be able to be accessed anonymously if you want, right? So it's like that kind of stuff is quite difficult to like do by default, right? It's just not really a thing. So I think of it as a positive for sure. But yeah, like we'll have to see how it goes, right? Like we'll see how it happens as far as monetizing content and so forth. Like initially it's probably just going to be a tip based thing where people can tip the content creator. Like now, as time goes on, I did initially have 3 leveling methods in mind, right?
Could also be
um,
private groups for initially.
Right. Yeah. So
Subscriber
you can
based.
you can do subscription based stuff. We don't have that tied to data yet, like officially, right? But I think that could be something that could be done with the app itself. But we're gonna make that a thing anyway. So you'll be able to build an app privately that's only accessible if you're in a private group. So then you could have, say, an AT that automatically pays court on a schedule, and as long as that's happening, then you have access to this private group, right? And then you have access to that application and so forth. That also allows cool things to take place, like an application that has a quote unquote front end and a back end, right? So you can have, people who access it without being in this group, they see one thing. People who access it while being in this group, they see another, right? That will be something that we add in the relatively near future. I don't know exactly when that's going to take place, but that is something that I would like to focus on potentially after light nodes. I don't know. I'm going to have to let Cal kind of lead the way on this one because it's really up to him as far as like what he thinks is best, as far as the direction goes, because he's the one actually building it, right? So I'm going to let him decide like what comes next. I'll give some general ideas of what I think would be nice, and then we can see how it goes, right? I know there's some other like lower level things like the archive method and so forth that we need to implement, and some other things that he's working on right now that are a bit more sensitive that we just need to get out and released. So I know there's some stuff like that that needs to be done to prevent bugs and so forth. So we need to get that done first. Then I'll give him an idea of what I would like to see and what the community would like to see, and then we'll kind of go from there. But I also have said multiple times now that I don't want to see any other big decisions being made without the voting system. So I really want the voting system to come really soon after QFs if possible, so that we can have all this decision making being made publicly as it's supposed to be, so that everyone can contribute and so forth. So we will definitely get that done in the near future as well. Yeah, but just having the QApps functionality is going to be massive, guys. Like, people are going to be able to build applications now, and they're going to be able to publish all kinds of different data really easily, right? And you'll be able to basically replace your need for quote unquote social media stuff with Qortal, especially after we get the QChat database and protocol and the comments and so forth on blog posts. Then it's over, guys. Like, you don't need Twitter or Reddit or any of the stuff anymore. Like, and we make it so easy for people to access and so easy for people to use. Gateway authentication comes; they're able to access it on the internet at first and say, "Wow, this is cool." They get an account created for them. They download that. They run a single installation, sets up the core and the UI. Bam, they're accessing it decentralized now, and they're good to go, right? Like, so we are now to that point, and it's very exciting time for the project. I am extremely stoked to see what happens, like what other people build, like, because now we're basically opening Qortal up to the world. Yeah, people could publish websites, but they had so many limitations and whatever, right? But now you can publish a Q app and you can do basically whatever, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun to see what
including your own
happens.
versions of
Yeah.
like YouTube or content creations, your own monetization apps. I mean, that was a big word there, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People can build their own solutions as they see fit. There is zero gatekeeping other than asset issuance or becoming a mentor.
Right.
Those are the
Well,
only
we
three
haven't even
aspects of
really
the
talked
platform.
about asset issuance yet. We've talked about it a little bit, and I'm not really a fan. But we'll see how that goes in the future. We can decide all that with the voting system too.
Right.
Qortal Seth has a question that's, are any groups other than Qortal dev team planning on making Q apps as soon as they become available? If not, how do we plan on getting enough developers and organizations to create thriving QApp ecosystem? I'm not sure how Qortal functionality to organize developers into something similar to a business. Okay, so I know a couple of people who do want to build Q apps. I am potentially going to assist them with making that happen. I don't know like exactly when they're all going to be doing this, but one of them initially is definitely going to want to build what amounts to a marketplace. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know exactly all the details on that right now, but that's definitely a thing. How do we plan on getting enough developers? So it's going to be really that we just need to show people that this is available. Once it's available, then I think the developers will kind of want to build on this, because as Phil mentioned, it's so much easier, guys. Like, it's easier to build a Q app than it would be to build a web app, because you don't have to worry about the back end stuff. You literally just build the application and publish it. So developers are going to love this. They're going to love the ability to just write their application, not have to worry about any of the infrastructure behind it, publish it, and it's live, right? So I think that the getting developers part is really not going to be that difficult, especially because it's JavaScript. How many JavaScript developers exist? A lot of them, right? So they can use their existing skills. They don't have to learn a new language. They have to learn a few simple API calls, which are not hard at all, and they just start building their application. And then they have an application that's hosted forever for free on a distributed decentralized network, accessible by all, even through the internet, through a public gateway that they didn't even have to set up, right? So it's like, who is not going to want to take advantage of this, right? Like that's my question. And so as far as using Qortal functionality to build something like a business, right? You can do that in multiple ways. I would suggest registering the business name as a registered name, right? Then, as we get a little further along, utilizing private groups and group controlled transactions to make certain things happen, right? But just registering the name as a registered name, you could call that a business if you like, right? We don't have like, you don't have to follow the quote unquote laws of the other system. You don't have to, guys. Like, you can literally just register a name, say, this is my company, and go along with it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what else you want as far as organizing developers into a business. But yeah, like when we have a QChat database and protocol, all the communications can be done that way. You can use a private group to do those communications or multiple private groups for different things, right? There's a lot more that'll come along with that. I mean, just registering the name basically makes it a quote unquote company. Then you can build your application or whatever service you want on top of that name. People can default access it through Qortal or through a gateway, and you've got everything you need, right? Like you'll be able to take payments in all the supported coins and so forth. So, I mean, I don't know what else you really need as far as a business established on Qortal, but I think everything is pretty much there already. The private group functionality already exists in the UI for the stuff like QChat and so forth. The only problem is that the messages don't last long enough yet, but that's going to be a focus here very soon. So that'll all be taken care of. And yeah, like you'll be able to do basically everything. I don't know what else you need as far as a company goes. But yeah, I mean, establish that group, put as many people as you want in that group, tie it to that name. There you go, right? Like, so that's your company, and the name is the company's assets and so forth, and the whole digital presence. Then you can sell that entire company at once to someone else in court on the names market, and everything goes along with it, and it stays exactly the way it was before. It keeps working exactly the same way, right? So that alone is massive. It's like selling your entire web presence with the server and everything and the domain and all of the followers and all of it all at once, really, really easily, right? So yeah. When will the default base 58 change? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a broad question. Um, I know that. Well, I don't even really know. The aren't isn't Cal changing a lot of it to base 64 if I'm correct? Yeah, we'll have to get more details on that specific question.
We have an auto update pending. Did we get enough signatures on that?
Oh, do we have one right now? Yeah,
Yes,
we might be.
sir.
Okay, yeah, we're about to push an update for some of the base level stuff that we need to do before QApps goes live. So that's going to happen today. And yeah, like I don't think I have much else to talk about. I got to start getting ready for the other thing that I'm doing. I have some other stuff to do before that too. So if anyone else has any other questions right now, let me know. If not, I like to cut this off right before 2 hours anyway. So yeah, Core 391 is on the way today. Will it ever improve as a roadmap for encryption in general? Yeah, I mean, we have the ability to change anything, right? So like we can always improve anything. If you have a suggestion, just let us know. Or if you're talking about specifically encryption on like groups for group chat and so forth, that is being discussed. We have talked about methods to do that. We have also talked about methods to handle the sales of private data on the names market. So there's a lot of stuff going on as far as that goes. But we have the ability to modify any algo that we use. As long as we keep backwards compatibility, we just move forward and switch to another one, right? So if you have like any specific suggestions, then just let us know and we'll relay that and we can make that happen, right? Until we get the voting system, it's kind of a more loose type of thing. If you have suggestions like to modify certain things, just have to let us know. But what we're going to do when the voting system goes live is you'll be able to put that up as a proposal, and it'll get passed and then officially put in and so forth. So yeah, the AES algo used for data to GCM. Yeah, that's a change that we're doing right now for sure. There's a lot of like low level stuff that we don't really like usually talk about publicly. That's constantly being addressed and changed and improved and so forth. We have like a ton of different algos that we use for different things and different like types of formats that we use for different things. So it's like there's a lot of different stuff going on. Yeah, Dandelion for sure. We definitely want to do that. And as far as encrypting the sync traffic, because the data on QDN is already encrypted in chunks, so that's not a big deal. We are looking at and improving the algo that's used for that. But as far as the sync traffic, that's the only thing right now that's not encrypted, right? So what I am planning on initially, right, is to allow Qortal to connect over Reticulum, which I haven't started like totally digging into that because I'm waiting, hopefully, for the dev to reach out to me and he'll be able to teach it to me a lot faster than I can figure it out myself. But if he doesn't hear in the next week or so, I'll probably start looking into it further myself and see if I can make it happen. If we could do that, then that handles encryption for the sync traffic by itself, right? So we don't have to really worry about doing it on our end. But we will probably do that anyway, too, in the future. So we'll have everything like at least encrypted once, if not encrypted once, and then through an encrypted tunnel, right? So it'll be like double encrypted, right? So yeah, we're gonna make all kinds of changes like that. What I'm more focused on at the moment is getting QApps out. Once we get QApps out, I want to put as much of our like releases and bootstraps and all of that kind of stuff, anything that you need to download, I want it all hosted on QDN if possible, right? So that's what I personally want to focus on is getting it all hosted on top of QDN so that we can have our binary releases and everything done from QDN so that we don't have to worry about doing that from GitHub and so forth. We'll probably still we have to use GitHub until we don't, or until we have our GitHub replacement, of course. But I think the more that we can put on QDN, the better. So the less reliance we have upon anything on the internet at all, right? But anyways, I think I'm going to stop the recording because I don't want that to go on forever. I'll stick around for a little bit longer on the call if anybody has any questions or whatever. And this group in the cloud here will be available. So if anyone has other questions or whatever, they can message here and it will be, read and seen at some point, right? Like I can't guarantee that I'm going to stay on top of it all the time. I don't think the notification system works very well on the cloud, and I've not like put a lot of effort into fixing it because ultimately all of this stuff is going to be rebuilt on top of Qortal anyway. So I don't like focusing on things built on the internet. I feel like that's focusing on the past when we should be focusing on the future. So but yeah, like ultimately I would like to see a setup just like this on QDN too. So but yeah, and that's going to be a little bit further down the line. But yeah, anyways, I will stop the recording now. Thanks everyone for coming as usual, and I hope you're all excited as I am about potentially having QApps this weekend. Thanks. See you later. All right, recording's over. I'll stick around for a little bit. If you need anything, let me know. Hold on, I got another call coming in.